This is the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. I'm your host, Amanda Kendall of the notaballerina.com travel blog. Every episode I'll share travel tales from several fellow travel lovers, and together we hope to entertain and inspire you, remind you of some of your own great travel experiences, and encourage you to hit the road again soon. Hello and welcome to episode 146 of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Today's episode is all about travelling in Iran. Now, I didn't intentionally go out to make an episode about travelling in Iran, but of late I have just had all these people tell me amazing stories about their experiences in Iran, all exceedingly positive. And so an episode has just made itself, basically. Now, I have not been to Iran yet, but definitely after chatting with these three guests, I feel compelled to go. I have always been interested, I suppose. Many years back in my early 20s, one of my first full-time jobs, I worked with two brothers from Iran, and they were just the loveliest people. One of them was the IT guy, and you always want to have a good IT guy in your department, especially if you're working in an office job, because the IT guy is really important. And he was just so helpful, and no question was ever too stupid, and he was always speedy at helping and so competent as well. So anyway, these two lovely men did already make me have a very positive feeling about Iran, despite all of the things you might see in the media and the history of the recent decades especially. So I've always been curious, haven't been, but I think that if you feel like me and haven't been yet, after listening to this episode, you will be ready to book as well. So my first guest today is Brett Seychell from Social Cycles, and he has been to Iran a number of times already.
Towards the end of 2011, I rode a bicycle across Iran as part of my big trip when I cycled from Melbourne to London, and I went through Iran, came in very top through Tehran and down the very south to Bandar Abbas and got a boat over to the UAE. So I spent 6 weeks in Iran. There was two of us, myself and a female traveller, and we didn't really, we did our research and all that sort of thing, of course, but, you don't know until you actually get there what it's going to be like. And, when we told people that we're going to go to Iran, most people were like, whoa, are you crazy? Like, that's absolutely nuts, and you just get this perception that we're just going to get bombarded with like suicide bombers or whatever. Everyone's going to hate us, and it's just going to be really hostile and an angry country, and and all this sort of thing. And nothing could be further from the truth. We crossed the border at Turkey, and we cycled the whole way. It was a long way, and I think people's treatment of us was like nothing I've ever seen. I'd have to say I've traveled a lot. It's probably the friendliest country that I think I've ever been to. And when you speak to anyone that's actually been to Iran, I've never heard anything different. I've never heard anyone say, yeah, I spent 3 weeks in Iran and I came baback, it was horrible. Like it's just never been said. No. It is unbelievably friendly. And so the girl that I was traveling with, she's actually reading Lonely Planet, and was advising that the woman needs to walk 2 steps behind the man, and the woman won't speak to the man or the man won't speak to a woman directly, and it will be sort of communicated through a male partner and whatnot. And she's getting a bit feisty over it. This is rubbish. Why should I wear a hijab and all this sort of stuff? And it was like, look, you know what? Let's just respect local law and local culture, and we'll take it on face value. Let's just see how it goes. But there's no way this girl was going to walk 2 steps behind me. be more likely me walking 2 steps behind her.
Right.
So that was between us, and that's just the way that we are, and that's fine. So, but we crossed the border, and geez, it was within an hour of cycling past. A car pulled over, and he says, geez, what are you doing, and where are you going? And I'm a doctor, and you should come and stay at my house and talk to us, and this, that, and the other. And we were just like, oh, okay, sure. So it turned out he was a vet, and we found it. It was quite late, and we found it. And he brought all his friends around and this, that, and the other, and he's shaking her hand, shaking my hand. So there was physical contact, there was direct eye contact, it was fine. Just like, absolutely.
Oh,
it was
wonderful.
Ridiculous what we were reading in this sort of perception or whatever. It was absolutely fine, and he said, and the first thing he said, he's like, do you think that we're all Muslim? And we're like, well, geez, we really are not quite comfortable talking about religion on day one.
That's
I was like, yes, sure. I don't know. He said, no, I'm not Muslim. A lot of people are not Muslim. We don't have to be Muslim, but we have to say that we're Muslim, and this sort of thing. So he said it's very different what you see and what you hear, and it's so good that you come here and you ask questions and you have an open mind and you learn more. And so I was there for 6 weeks, and so what's that, like 45 days or something? I think I slept in about 30 different homes. And no shortage of exaggeration. When we're cycling along, there's so often, at least every day, 3 or 4 cars would pull over and they'd just say, "What are you doing? You crazy. You can't cycle through here. Where are you from?" And you say, she was from England, I was from Australia. And this is 2011. So we were just left Tehran, and the British embassy got burnt down or torn down and closed down. So there was a couple of riots around then. So we're talking the peak of political pressure.
Yeah, wow.
And we didn't feel any of it. Like it wasn't expressed to us. And so we'd say, "Where are you going?" And I'd say, "We're going to Esfahan." Said, "Esfahan? I live in Esfahan. You must come and stay at my house." So you're like, "Oh, okay." I don't think we ever really said no to anyone. Except sometimes we're really, really quite tired.
Yeah,
but,
sure.
So you'd go there, you swap phone numbers, and then you look at and then like you say, you start cycling, it's another 20K, so it's an hour or so, and then you're getting close and you look at your phone, you've got 6 missed calls, and it's like, "Where are you now? I'm on the corner, I'm waiting for you." And there's families we ended up staying with for like 3 or 4 days because the hospitality was just overwhelming, and they take you out to their families' houses and almost showing you off, almost like as a prize, like, "Look at, someone has come," and it was fantastic. And we even slept in some mosques. And look, this is a little edgy. We weren't married, not married, and it was just friends. And it was a bit having a woman and a man sort of sleeping in the same room as So, but they were okay. Anyway, so we got stuck one night, and as in we had nowhere to stay, and it was getting quite cold. And this was sort of around Turkey, Iran sort of areas in the mountains. There was snow on the side of the road, and it was very windy. So the wind was really, really sort of quite piercing. We had a tent, but it just wasn't going to suffice. So we kind of pulled over into a little village, and there was a barn. We were asking if they would mind moving their tractor so we could sleep in the barn to escape the wind, if that would be okay. And anyway, they sort of discussed between themselves, and then a man came, he spoke English, and he understood what we wanted, and the locals were sort of discussing, and he said, "Look, it's sunset, I need to pray, but I'll come back out and help you out." I said, "Sure, come back." And they had this conversation in Farsi, and it was, I don't know, but in my perspective, it seemed debatable or not heated, but,
Okay.
like
it wasn't
it wasn't a straight agreement. There was definitely discussion.
Right.
And he turned around and he says, "Look, everyone is a guest from God. And the prophet might be different, but the God is the same. And you've come here in search of salvation, and you're a guest from God. So this is how you will be treated." And there was no barn for us. We were by the fire, inside, own room, own bathroom, full bellies, dinner, taken out to the village as well, met all these other people, big breakfast, and then like everyone sort of come outside to farewell us off, and Facebook friends and all that sort of stuff.
How wonderful.
Absolutely fantastic. And I suppose, if I could sort of sum it up in one sentence, the overwhelming message I got from the people of Iran is, don't judge the country by the actions of the government, because it's two different things, and I think the same could be said for almost every government in the world. And I'm sure there's plenty of Americans out there that don't want to be judged by Trump, and I'm sure there was anyway, you can go on and on, but exactly. and it's very true. They're two very different people, and there was absolutely I'm not saying that everyone was the same, but all the people that we met, and I've been to Iran now half a dozen times. Continue going back. Yeah, well, I run. Well, I loved it so much that I've started running tours there. So I run bike tours in Iran because I think other people need to see this. I think I can talk about it till I'm blue in the face, and even the people that are open-minded enough to come on the rides that I do, they're like, "Okay, yeah, sure, I believe you," but until they experience it themselves, you just can't comprehend the depth of this hospitality and this, very, very warm nature of people.
So clearly Brett has had awesome experiences in Iran and keeps going back. That's already a pretty good judgment, isn't it? Now, my next guest today is Dale Neill, and he's also been to Iran taking a group on a tour there with an Iranian friend, and Dale tells us a bit more about Iran from the perspective of a photographer.
We took a group to Iran a couple of years ago, and it was absolutely fantastic and an eye-opener. A few people said to me before I left, oh, aren't you worried it's going to be dangerous? Well, the answer was no. And I've got to say that in almost 3 weeks there, I never saw a single gun on the streets.
Right.
And there aren't too many countries in the world I've been to recently that I can say that.
Yeah.
So now the first bit of fantastic news about Iran is the food is fabulous, and I lost 3 kilograms.
Oh.
Right?
How does that work?
It's almost, the food is so healthy.
Ah,
and, of course, there is no alcohol. That's the other factor.
Mm-hmm.
So that was good. That was a side benefit. In terms of the people, I can't remember being to any country in the last 20 years where the people are so friendly.
Wow.
Now, it's completely at odds with the perception we sometimes get through the media.
Yeah. But
people were approaching me all the time with words like, welcome to Iran. We hope you have a great stay. Please don't believe everything you read in the newspapers.
Mm.
And the other great benefit is, would you please photograph me?
Oh, wonderful. Okay. For a photographer, that's perfect.
Right. And now can we be photographed together?
Oh.
Now, here is a wonderful surprise that we met up with lots of school groups of schoolgirls. And the teachers would come up to us and say, please photograph our girls.
Huh.
Try doing that in Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. That's not going to work.
I'd be probably locked up.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, so the people in Iran are very, very open about having their portraits taken. In fact, in one case, it was a tiny bit embarrassing. I was in this beautiful garden area, and a young couple came up to me, and they had a tiny baby, only 3 months old, and they just thrust this baby into my arms and said, here, can we photograph you with our baby?
Oh, my goodness.
Now, I have to say, I'm always a bit dubious holding on to cameras. I don't want to drop a camera, but I was even more frightened that I'd do something with this baby. So I immediately went and sat down, and they photographed me with their baby. So there is this openness and invitation that you get, and I made some good contacts and good friends there with local people, and I got lots of fabulous photographs. So first of all, there's no problems with getting people photographs in Iran. That was the first thing. Now, when you go to the holy places, some of the mosques and so on, then that's a different situation,
right?
Because you can still take photographs, but people there are a bit more subdued, and they're not quite as open to being photographed. But one of the most interesting things about Iranian people is that many Iranian people they were born with a little bump in their nose. So they go off to have a tiny bit of surgery and have the bump removed. They get a nose job.
Uh-huh.
And it costs about between $1,000 and $1,500 US. And after you get it done, rather than hide away, what you then do is you have a little bit of sticking plaster or a little bit of some Band-Aids over your nose, but that becomes a badge of honour.
Because you've had that done.
You've had that done.
Gosh.
Now, it's being done by both women and men, but mainly women. So we were staying in this hotel one night, and I spotted this tall Iranian man, young man, 23, 25 years of age, and he had this big sticking plaster on his nose. So I thought I would have a conversation with him because I knew what he had done.
Mm-hmm.
So I went up to him and I said, hi, I said, what happened to your nose? And he looked at me and he smiled. He said, I'm a boxer. I've just been in a fight. I thought, that's his story. I'm going to let him stick to it. And But Iran is great. There are some fabulous buildings, particularly in the old bathhouses. So a lot of the old bathhouses have been converted into restaurants and museums and so on. So you can visit those, and there's beautiful lighting inside those as well. In between the major cities, there are large tracts of open desert area, but the cities themselves are fascinating. We spent time in Shiraz, and incidentally, there's no wine in Shiraz either.
How misleading!
But probably one of the highlights for me is that we went into a tiny, tiny factory that produces some sort of a grain. I just forget what the grain was.
Mm-hmm.
And it was filled with dust, and there was light coming through the windows, and they were grinding it with huge, great stone grindstones. And the atmosphere inside there, and the atmospherics was just fabulous.
Wow.
So, look, overall it was good. I was very, very lucky. I was with a local Perth tour leader, Mo Hosseini, and he's obviously, he speaks the language fluently, and he knows the customs. And so he did that side of the operation. I did the photographic side of it. And
sounds great.
It was good.
Just like Brett, Dale has travelled far and wide and spent, a lot of his life travelling, but also says Iran is the friendliest country he's been to. I mean, it's really stacking up well, isn't it? Now, my final guest today is Joanne Kargs, and a few episodes ago, back in episode 141, I chatted with Joanne already about some of her experiences in Iran, where she was talking about some of the locals that she met. So you might want to go back and listen to episode 141 to hear even more about Iran. But in this part of our chat, Joanne explains some other amazing parts of her trip to Iran.
We absolutely loved our time in Iran. We did a tour for 2 weeks, which I think was for us the right thing to do. It helped us get acquainted with how things worked. And then we went off on our own for 2 weeks. Our tour people had helped us with booking accommodation, told us how to catch buses, etc., like that. And so we went off on our own, and that was just amazing, because people come back and say, well, you went on your own in Iran. I mean, I'm probably from a more conservative family and friendship group, and they couldn't believe that we were in Iran. But it was probably our best holiday ever.
Oh, wow, really? That good?
Yeah, it was. I mean, obviously there's issues. The people very much, when they talk to you, separate themselves from the government.
Right.
So say, there's the people and there's the government. And they ask you, what did you think before you came to Iran? What do you think now? What did you think of the hijab before you came to Iran? What do you think now? They just want to know. They desperately want contact with people from outside of Iran. Because a lot of them can't afford to travel. A lot of them may not be able to travel. The government may not give them visas or, exit visas or things like that. But, it was really good.
Wow, that sounds amazing. Where did you visit when you travelled on your own, and what kind of experiences did you have?
So the ones I've described to you mostly were when we were on our own, those experiences. But we pretty much went, the tour route goes from Tehran down south to Shiraz. And we decided to actually retrace our steps with a couple of extra stops in between, because we just wanted to spend a little bit more time in those places and get to know them a little bit better, which I think was perfect. And then we did a few extra things as well. One amazing experience, which I've written about, is in Kashan, which is just south of Tehran. We went back there and we decided to have 3 days there, and we did a driver took us to the desert, which was fabulous in itself. But The reception at the hotel, the young man at the reception became quite friendly with us. He was helping us arrange things, etc. And so when we left the hotel, it was all sort of smiles and thank you so much, and, thanks for a lovely time. We've really enjoyed our time in Kashan. Bye-bye. And off we went. And he'd arranged a car taxi to take us to the bus stop, which happened. And the taxi driver or the driver, it all sounds very posh, the driver, but it wasn't posh. It's just, somebody off the street. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he told us how to collect our tickets, which we'd pre-booked, but we hadn't actually got them, and where to get the bus and everything. So everything was very easy. We got on the bus, and the bus trip itself is quite fascinating because you buy your tickets. If you're like us, you buy your tickets at the station and you get on the bus at the bus station. And then the bus leaves the station, and 10 meters outside of the gates of the bus station, the conductor person calls out of the door, calling for other people who want to get on the bus.
Ah.
And they basically don't then pay the tax or the fee for the bus station. So
Clever.
They get their ticket a little bit cheaper. Yeah, very clever. I mean, they're taking a chance the bus might be full, but
of course, yes.
the ones we went on weren't full. And then all the way outside of, as we left Kashan, he's picking up more passengers. He's picking up crates of water, or in one instance, Persian carpets. So he's acting as a transporter as well of goods, which was fine. Anyway, we're driving along, and we'd been driving probably 40, 45 minutes, maybe 50 minutes, and nobody on the bus spoke English. We were the only English-speaking people on the bus, and the conductor had already done what happens on all the buses. He'd come through and he'd handed out a little popper with juice and a biscuit.
Oh, nice.
Which is included in your $3 fare, which is for, I think, a 3-hour trip. So you get that as well for $3. Yep. I mean, it was incredible. Anyway, he comes down the aisle with his flip phone in his hand, and he's sort of looking at us, and I'm thinking, oh, yeah, what's going to happen now? And he passes the phone to my husband. And we think, well, maybe he's got a mate in Tehran who wants to take us around, and, fine, we'll just deal with that. And then my husband sort of says, hello. And then he said, yes. And then he said, oh.
Uh-oh.
And then he said, oh. And then he looked at me, he said, we've left our passports in Kashan.
Oh, no.
Which was not the very clever thing to do, because you have to have a passport to sign in, register at the hotel. You obviously have to have the passport to leave the country, which we were doing the next day.
Oh, no.
So my husband's a little bit hard of hearing, and he wasn't handling the phone very well, so he passed it on to me, and I spoke to the person at the other end who was the receptionist at the hotel. And he said his suggestion was that he would mail them to us. And
ooh.
I was not happy with that.
No,
no,
that doesn't sound good.
I really wanted to mail them. How do I know it's going to get there in time, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, how about you put them in a taxi? Because we've never felt safer than we felt in Iran. We were quite happy. I was quite happy to suggest that.
Right.
But he wasn't happy with that idea. So, okay. He said, well, where are you? I said, well, we haven't come to a place called Qom yet. He said, well, maybe you turn around at Qom, get on the next bus and come back and pick them up. Or maybe my husband goes tomorrow. We had photocopies of our passports, so hopefully we could register at the hotel in Tehran. Anyway, the decision was made that we would turn around at Qom. But the driver didn't speak English. Nobody on the bus spoke English. So how do we let them know? So I walked down to the front of the bus where the driver is driving and the conductor's sitting on my right, and I'm sort of looking at him, and I point ahead with both hands and I say, Qom is ahead. And I point to myself, and then I point to myself, I say us, and then I point out the door and we get off at Qom, and then I point my thumbs backwards and say, we're going back to Kashan. So I'm speaking English.
Yeah.
But I'm saying, Qom, we get off the bus, and while I'm talking to you now, I'm doing the hand signals.
I'm imagining it, yes.
Yeah. Qom ahead of us, me, get off the bus, go back to Kashan. I said 3 times, and he said yes. So I was like, okay, he understands. As I got back into my seat, and I tapped the guy on shoulder in front of me, and I said, "We haven't come to Qom yet, have we?" He said, "No, no, no, it's ahead." I mean, obviously, we were speaking pidgin English and doing hands, but
it's good to get some reassurance, yeah?
Exactly. I was quite happy that Qom was ahead of us. And then about, I don't know, a few minutes later, the guy comes up the aisle of the bus saying, Inglesi, Inglesi, Inglesi. He's asking his passengers if anybody speaks English because he wasn't quite sure. And I said, no, it's okay. At Qom, point ahead. We point to me. Get off, point to the door, and go back to Kashan. Okay, fine. So we pull in at Qom, where we had been before, but we hadn't been to the bus station. And the driver yells, hurry up, get off, Qom, get off, get your bags. So we get off, we get our bags, say thank you very much. And the taxi drivers were all just waiting there, and they just came like bees to the honey.
I bet.
Where do you want to go? Tehran, where you go, we'll take you. No, we're going to the bus. And we looked up, and there's a bus, and there's a man standing at the bus with the door open calling us. And I'm 100% sure that the bus that we were on had telephoned the other bus and said, we've got 2 people getting on your bus. They're, Anglos, and just wait for them.
Oh, that's so lovely.
It was amazing. And that was probably the most dramatic sort of story to tell, but it was just an example of the friendship and, that we experienced all through the country.
Well, if my 3 guests today have not convinced you to go to Iran, then perhaps you just haven't been listening. What do you think? Very, very ringing endorsements from everyone today. If you are curious to know more, come along and chat about Iran and anything else Thoughtful Travel in our Facebook group. You'll find it at Thoughtful Travellers on Facebook, and there'll be a link in the show notes too. The show notes for this episode are at notaballerina.com/146 for episode 146. Very, very big thank you to my guests. First up, we had Brett from Social Cycles. You can find more information about Brett and his tours at social-cycles.com. He has a range of really cool destinations, including, of course, Iran. Thanks also to Dale Neill. You can find more about Dale at daleneill.com.au. And last but definitely not least, I chatted with Joanne from Travel with Joanne, and you can find her at travelwithjoanne.com. And anything else, just come along and chat with us in the Facebook group, and don't forget the show notes at notaballerina.com as well. Thank you very much for listening. This has been another episode of the Thoughtful Travel Podcast. Show notes and other information are at notaballerina.com/podcast. Join me again soon for another chat about why we travel. Bye for now.